Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Distributors Deliver podcast. My name is Eric Hoplin. I'm the CEO of NAW, and on today's broadcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Kathy Mazzarella, the Chairman and CEO of Graybar. Kathy, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you today. I appreciate it.
We're glad you're here. Now, Kathy and I have been having a fun day, by the way. We just came from the White House. We met with Kevin Hassett. He's the director of the NEC. You know, Kathy, when you're in meetings like this, you're representing the $8.7 trillion distribution industry. What sort of things do you want a leader like Kevin Hassett to take away from meeting, to know about the industry?
I think the most important thing is that we exist.
Mm-hmm.
Too often, people don't understand what an impact that distribution has on the overall U.S. economy. And that was even evident in the meeting. I don't think he realized the magnitude of the influence and impact that we have in the day-to-day lives of people, as well as into the overall supply chain. So first and foremost, I think it's important that we get that across and that we continue to advocate on behalf of distribution, that we are a viable and vital link in the supply chain in the United States. And that when we run well, the economy runs well. To that end, I think it's important that policymakers understand also that the decisions that they make impact us on a day-to-day basis, and that it's incumbent on us as leaders in distribution to make sure that we bring that real-world perspective to these folks so that they understand that they can make our lives very difficult and inefficient, or they can help us with policies and decisions that really improve the resiliency and the efficiency of the supply chain in the United States. So those are the big things I think we need to get across. And just having a seat at the table is really important.
A beautiful table today.
Oh, that was gorgeous. That whole room was spectacular.
Yeah, they don't make buildings like that anymore.
No, not even close.
Well, and, it was a great discussion with Director Hassett, and we also had the Chief of Staff from the Department of Transportation. And any takeaways from the meeting?
Yes, they really listened to what we had to say about the overall economy. And it was interesting, the representatives around the table from the Board of Directors of NAW represented all types of sectors in the United States. And I think that's also important for them to understand that we touch healthcare, we touch energy, infrastructure, we touch food, we touch dental. And so we best represent what really is going on the street in distribution. We are also in every single neighborhood. I don't think they realize the fact that we are in every single community. And so it's important for them to hear our voice. And it's important and incumbent upon us to be very clear and articulate in things that we need to make our businesses better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so Kathy, you're the chair, as we talked about, of the NAW Board of Directors this year, and you've been involved with NAW for a long time.
Long time, decades.
And so as you think about from the perspective of a CEO, why is it important to engage in politics and public policy and be engaged here in Washington?
Too often, I think advocacy is mixed up with taking a political position. And I think it's important to understand, to me, advocacy really is about education and the ability to influence decisions on the betterment of whatever you're advocating for, right? In our case, it's the National Association of Wholesalers. I believe that we can help shape things for the better, not just for our industry, but for all the employees that work in our industry and the customers in which we serve. It's important for the leaders in distribution to step up too. Too often, I think we're okay in a role of sitting back, and we only engage once decisions are made or things happen. I think it's important for us to be much more proactive and much more vocal, because we can bring the real world perspectives. When I served, I had the opportunity to serve as the chair of the board of the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. And that was my first exposure where I got to, learn how the government operated a little bit, which was very beneficial to me as an executive. So I think that's important for us in NAW as the leaders, especially on the board, to understand how politics work, right? And the big government machine works. But I also think it's important that we share the real world impact. We share what's happening on the street. We can give them a future view of the trends that we're seeing, not just on a federal level, but I feel it's important for us to advocate on the state and local level also. Because what's happening today is so much of the things that are being basically pushed down the road on the federal level are now ending up in the states. And that whole patchwork of inconsistent decisions makes it extremely difficult for those of us who have a national footprint or a broader scale in distribution to actually run our businesses.
Yeah, we're seeing that across lots of different regulations. I was in Congress testifying about AI recently, and one of the topics of conversation is, if the states start having patchworks of regulations, one of the bugaboos is dynamic pricing.
Yes.
And so if you can use it in Minnesota, but you can't use it in South Dakota, or vice versa, and how difficult that is going to be for businesses. So engaging and letting policymakers and lawmakers know before it happens to us,
and letting them know that the decisions that they're making don't just impact the business. It's impacting all the employees within our organizations. We try to encourage our employees, and I know a lot of other distributors also, to engage in local politics themselves or get involved in advocacy on a state or local level also, because we feel it's important for our employees' voices to be heard in many cases, not just industry people. The environment's changed a lot over the last several years because of this distrust in institutions,
right.
Whether it's the government institutions, it could be communities, churches. It also has eroded the trust in a lot of the businesses, unfortunately. And so engaging some of our employees and engaging leaders in the process of advocating on what's best for all of us, I think helps develop a trust with the government and the policymakers, and I think that is invaluable.
And I think what some people forget about is sometimes they think of Washington or the state capitals as a big monolith that kind of thinks in one way, but really if you break it down, it's run by people. People like Kevin Hassett. And so by engaging with them, by having a conversation with them, by helping them understand some of the challenges we're facing and maybe how the government can make it just a little easier to run a business in America, those conversations are important because those people are the ones who are influencing or making those decisions ultimately.
That's right. But I also think it's important we understand the challenges they face. Too often, it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and judge somebody else. We see that in when you're running in a career too. You'll look at another person's job and say, "Oh, if I had that role, I could do this." Well, it's the same thing in government. We need to understand the complexity and the challenges that they are facing in making those decisions, understanding that no matter what decision you make, there will be people that are unhappy with it. What we can help them with is helping explain the why. So if we understand why they're making the decision, maybe as business leaders, we can engage with our teams and our communities and the businesses in which we touch and try to explain the why behind the decisions to also make it easier for those to be executed.
One of the things I hear a lot about, Kathy, from leaders is there's so many things in the macro environment that are outside of their control but impact their business. Things happening in Iran, and now oil prices are going up. There's some kerfuffle at the Fed leadership. Who's going to lead and how and why and what's going to happen there. The tariff rates changing and there's new laws, new regulations, and now refunds, and so there's all these things that create so much noise in the system. As you think about it, what is your global perspective, and as a leader, what advice do you have for others that are navigating those macro trends?
Well, we're going to have macro trends always. I've been in the industry for over 46 years, so I've seen a lot, right? When you look at just even distribution or the U.S. economy, I've been through 6 recessions at least that I know of. Y2K, the boom bust of the .com. I've been through the deregulation of the telecom industry. I've been through COVID. We've been through the rise of social media, the rise of the internet. We've seen the housing crisis in 2007, 2008, that time period. And it's interesting because we get really worried about this. We start panicking, people overcorrect, people think the whole industry's changing or the economy is going to crash and we're going to be in trouble. But when you look back at distribution especially, the one thing that we can always count on is if we stay focused on the important things, right? The important things, and let the noise swirl around us, and we focus on what we do about it, how we react to it, the resiliency of the people that are in our industry are second to none. That doesn't change. And it's our job as leaders to understand that we need to filter through the noise and run our businesses in good times as if there's a little bit coming that there's something that's not going to be so good. And if we manage, and in times which are tough like COVID, that was a testament to the leadership in all organizations, is we had to portray the strength that we were going to get through this and that we had to stay focused on what was really important, which in distribution is taking care of our customers, taking care of our suppliers, right? Investing in the long term and taking care of our employees. And so to me, you have all this noise, and we're going to continue to have, we have geopolitical unrest, which is challenging for distribution. We have the tariffs, we have trade policies that impact supply chain. We have workforce issues, and we spoke a little bit about it today. We brought up immigration, that we need somebody to get their arms around this immigration policy because we need people. We need population growth, and we need workers. And so somebody's got to figure out immigration. And we're going to continue to have these around tax policy. Like the tax law that was passed has been tremendous. The tax relief that they gave to working families is second to none. It allows people, our employees, to take their hard-earned dollars and invest it the way they choose to, right? And then the tax law changes for businesses. When that came in, my company, which basically is a C Corp, we paid, normal business taxes. We took that money and invested in hiring more people, invested in new buildings, new trucks, inventory, technology. We invested back in the business, which is exactly the types of policies that we need.
For growth policies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, everything's scary. AI is scary now. The social discourse is scary now. Social media is a concern. People are angry. There's distrust. But you know what? As leaders, and especially in distribution, we tend to take a long-term view. And at the end of the day, if we manage for the long term and stay focused on what we do good and understand that it will change, the things that are bad aren't really as bad. There's a path out. And when things are good, we should be preparing for things won't be good. We're going to be great as an industry, and the U.S. economy is going to churn along. I mean, we got to stop being so afraid.
Yep. And nobody wants to have to navigate through challenges,
No.
but I do think that one thing that sets distributors apart is when there are challenges. That's when we're at our strongest. That's when our customers need us the most. And so we thrive in those environments.
During COVID.
Yeah.
We were integral to the supply chain in COVID. Our people showed up. Most distributors, our people came in because they had to.
Yeah, everyone else went home. The distributors went to work.
The product had to get to wherever it was needed. And just watching the resilience of the people during that time period made me double down in my belief on the power of human beings in business in general. AI will never be able to replace the human side. It will supplement it. And the companies that are going to be successful in the future, you can take all the noise away. We're all going to be displaced, all that stuff. At the end of the day, we've heard it before. The internet was going to destroy us. These non-traditional distributors are going to wipe out distribution as a whole, right? At the end of the day, it forced us to be better. And it redefined some of our roles and jobs, but it also allowed us to provide skills for our people. It forced our people to learn new things and become better and stronger. It's the same thing that's going to happen with AI.
Yeah, and let's pull on that thread a little bit, because as we've talked about this in the past, I think it's so refreshing, your perspective on AI. There's a lot of fear around it.
Yes.
Is it going to replace all of the jobs?
Absolutely.
Am I going to be as needed? Of course, there's huge efficiencies that it's going to bring. Why don't you share with the audience a little bit your perspective, kind of from the CEO level of how do you incorporate AI effectively across the enterprise?
Well, some of the ways to look at it is, what is your core business? You need to understand. And in business in general, I think what happens is we get distracted by shiny objects or the new thing, even with AI. And you lose sight of the fact that basically business is pretty straightforward. You have a product or service that is available. You have a need, right? You find your customers, you sell it, and you get paid. Pretty basic stuff. The execution gets noisy and we get distracted from that core as to what the business is we're trying to do. But AI, to me, is another tool. The companies that are going to be successful balance the science of technology with the art of humanity, and that nuance is what's going to be important.
The art of humanity. I like that.
It's true, because business is still a relationship focus, especially us, especially in distribution. Too often we sit there and say AI will replace all transactions until you have a problem. I don't know about you, but when I buy something online, I'm good transacting until I can't.
Yep. And then you want to talk to someone right away.
Yeah, I don't want a bot. I don't want somebody who's going to sit there and just give me some standard line. No, I want somebody who uses judgment, who sits there and can critically think and can help me solve, and that I trust will solve that. And so to me, AI is a tool. It will take care of routine things. There will be certain functions that will be completely displaced by AI. Right, there will. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. Some of the board members and I were talking about the fact that, look, at the legal profession is going to change significantly. Because in our world, we have a thing called the Graybar brain, which is an AI tool used in our legal department. They can read contracts in a couple of minutes now, this tool, versus taking 45 minutes to an hour with an attorney. Well, that changes the dynamic of people's roles and jobs. It's also important for us to, when I view this as business, is to take any function that doesn't require human judgment, that is repetitive in nature, is informational gathering. Go ahead and automate it. Go ahead and use AI and take that and really nurture the human side of the business where you're developing the relationship. Customers were going to want to transact only online. That's great. So we're going to have to offer that. But customers in distribution, it's a people-to-people business, period. At the end of the day, people are going to conduct business with people they trust. Trust cannot be built through AI. Even with the bots, even with these creatures that are coming on that are scary, actually, that can create these false narratives and all this type of stuff, they still need a human being at the end of the day. To me, that's our competitive advantage. We can't lose sight of the human element in distribution, and I don't think we need to. I was able to, just with one AI function, free up 8 hours a week per customer service rep.
Wow.
Now, that's with one type of tool. That's real savings. And so I look at that and I say, that doesn't mean I'm going to have less people. That means I need to redesign what these people are doing so that they can help customers more with things that require human judgment. And so for me, AI augments human work. And so I describe it as human-augmented AI, not AI replacing humans.
Yeah, human-augmented AI. I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yep.
So beyond AI, are there other trends in distribution that you're watching that are interesting?
Some of the trends are the rise of private equity that is coming into distribution. Some people are concerned that it's a negative. Some people are concerned or happy that it's a positive. I don't think it's either. I think it can be both. Just depends how you view it. Private equity has created an environment where the strategic buyers, right, who would like to buy a company, the multiples have risen significantly in certain areas. I know in my own world. And so then you have to decide long-term how you want to play.
Yep.
But it's another form of capital that's been introduced. It also has brought discipline in some cases. I had the opportunity to serve on a board of a distributor who was owned by a private equity firm. So I got to see firsthand how they were managed. The company eventually went public, and the way they run publicly now is different, right? The private equity firm introduced an operational discipline that the organization needed in some cases. Super data-driven, but a lot of capital for growth, which was all positive. What I saw, though, was less emphasis on the personality, the cultural side, right? It was more of a short-term type of approach versus that long-term view, which most distributors take. I mean, when you look at a distributor, and some of the distributor folks were talking about this morning, they were saying, I've had customers for 50 years. So have we, right? That's not unusual. Private equity doesn't necessarily have that same time horizon. And so, that focus on short-term is a change. Some companies need that, though, right? Some companies need that kind of
let's get real efficient,
discipline.
real fast.
Yeah. And when we bought it, what we saw was some of the negative side. So we purchased some companies that were owned by private equity, and what we saw was this: over-optimization, where they really starved the company with basic investments. Technology, they didn't hire enough people, trucks needed to be replaced, buildings needed to be repaired. So we saw it starved in order to drive up the profitability, right? We saw the cultural erosion. And if you don't focus on the culture and the people, and you're very clear on the non-negotiables around that, what happens is your customers and employees are more likely to leave. And so we started seeing that around the edges around private equity. We also saw in private equity that short-term view. So distributors in the future, I think, which is going to be good for us, and the trends we need to follow is that balance between scale and efficiency. You need to be able to kind of do both, right? And that's a trend right now is scale, is big, big, big. But sometimes you can get too big. That whole idea about short-term, long-term balance is that we need to focus on the long-term, which is what made distribution so strong and such a vital link in the supply chain in the United States, while managing it with the short-term agility and responsiveness that our market's going to need, because the rate of change is accelerating like we've never seen before. And I know we've always said this as business people, the rate of change is accelerating. But today, it's in technology, it's in capital flows, it's in human capital, it's in infrastructure, it's in new competitors, right? So it's every aspect of the business. And then the distributors need to remain just relentlessly focused on the customer and not lose sight at the end of the day. If we don't have customers, you can do all this fancy stuff, this technology, you can invest in infrastructure, you can buy companies, but if you don't have that customer, you will die. You will cease to exist. And so I think the private equity has driven changes. I think distributors are responding effectively. And in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. Trend, I think that erosion of trust in institutions is a real challenge today and for leadership into the future. Is how
One
do
of
we?
the things that surprised me when you said that before is, we've seen that a lot, institutions in government, but businesses have been always highly regarded. So you think it's even
Small
slipping
businesses
in?
have.
Oh, yes, right, okay. Yep.
Small businesses have. So your local businesses, the ones that are embedded in your local community where you know them, they go to the same church as you, they are from civic organizations, they sponsor the baseball teams. That's good. What they don't trust are the bigger businesses.
Sure.
And when you look at that ranking of distrust, big CEOs of big companies, we're down there with Congress.
Yeah.
And building that trust is tough because there's such an anger right now, it seems, in this. And so I would say the socio environment when it comes to demographics and the social network has changed significantly, and that trend is getting more and more negative. And so managing employees in an environment where people are angry, people are frustrated, people are afraid, people have distrust is a challenge, and it's a trend that we're seeing continue. And so how do you lead through that? How do you build trust in an environment where AI is creating these worlds that sometimes aren't accurate and aren't true, is going to be a challenge.
Because so, you could be the source of truth, but as you're saying, if people don't trust you,
that's right.
Then maybe they'll trust what the bot is.
That's exactly right. And if you don't get ahead of it, and that's the other thing with social media, right? Social media has been around for a while, but the trend in social media now is to get ahead of facts in some cases. And it's interesting because as businesses, we tend to be more conservative, right? You tend to validate your facts. You don't have that time anymore. You've got to get ahead of stuff. You've got to try to shape the narrative, because if the narrative gets out ahead of you in your business, your brand can be negatively impacted, even if you do everything right. And so some of those trends are creating a business environment which is challenging. You're seeing record numbers of CEOs retiring and new CEOs coming in that have the energy to deal with some of these trends. But at the end of the day, it's still about pretty basic. You find a customer, you have employees, you create an environment where they feel safe, they trust you, they know you're going to take care of them, you value them as human beings, you're going to pay them well, you're going to give them an opportunity to live the life they choose to live, and know they'll be taken care of. And if we focus on that, we're good.
If every company in America did that, just imagine how fantastic it would be. But a lot of the political leaders in Washington, they think corporate leaders are these greedy people that are trying to hoard all the money. But I just want people to listen to what you just said, because when I talk to distributors across the country, that's their feeling as well.
Of course,
they want to take care of their people.
Well, and most distributors, when you talk to us, we've been there forever. We grew up in the industry. We've done a lot of these roles. We have families. We're involved in our communities. We're human beings. Leaders, most leaders I know, now there's some people that are not good, and it's in every factor of life, right? But most executives of companies, especially in distribution, are good human beings. And you ask them all the time, what do you want your legacy to be? You know what they say?
What?
I want to be known as somebody who took care of my people.
Sure, of course.
Almost the number one thing they say. Well, that's not greedy. That's not selfish. That's not money-hungry power. They really want to leave a legacy improving the lives of the people that they touch. Their employees,
it's true, it's genuine. It's one of the reasons I love this industry.
Absolutely. My daughter has always said this to me. Being around for so long, my kids grew up in the industry. They've met a lot of people. And they universally say, distribution has the nicest people we've ever met.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned leading through environments that have changed over time. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. It comes in all different styles, shapes, and forms. What do you think are some of the key drivers in how you approach leadership?
I think leadership is one of those roles where it has to evolve, right? certain things have to evolve. Sometimes your style has to change based off of who you're working with. But what should never change in leadership, and this is where I think leaders lose sight, is the non-negotiables, your soul, right? And as a leader, you have to define, you personally and you as an organization, those non-negotiables of your organization. In my case, it's employee ownership, right? Period. That is the anchor of my company, period, no question. And all the decisions are tied to that, right? Long-term employee ownership, it's about us as a collective. That's the way it is. And me personally, it really is about the fact that the end of the day, I have a really fancy title. I get to go to the White House. I get to hang out with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a
I get to
privilege,
do all sorts of cool things. I get to, go to fancy places. But at the end of the day, I'm just a person, right? I still do my laundry. I still go grocery shopping. I have kids. I have grandkids. And the reality is my job as a leader is to help improve the lives of others. However that's going to look. It's not to judge them. It's not to dictate. It's not to force them into anything I think they should be. It's to try to make them feel safe and comfortable so that they contribute to the betterment of our organization, period, and the people that they work with. So for me, that's a non-negotiable, right? To me, I want to be known as a person who cared, but also didn't settle. My brother used to describe me, he said, man, you've got that iron fist in a glove.
Okay, yeah.
And he said, every time you pat somebody on the back, say, good job, you're kicking them in the tail to say, come on, get moving forward.
We can do more.
We can do more. We can do more.
Yeah.
Because I believe in the human potential, that we all have gifts, that we just need to find out what those gifts are and to unleash them toward a common goal. And at the end of the day, that's what leadership should be, right? Is you have a goal and objective for your organization to move it forward, and it's to get people to believe in the gifts they have, to develop them and unleash them. And if we can do that as leaders, that we're going to all win.
Yeah.
Nobody can touch us. But we also have to believe that it's a never-ending journey. We as human beings have unlimited capacity and unlimited potential to develop further, and it's the same concept with your businesses. Too often I see businesses of all size stagnate. They start believing their own press. They start thinking they're better than everybody, or they don't need to change or evolve. No, human beings and businesses are the same. If you don't grow, and if you don't evolve, and if you don't change, then you start dying. And it's the way in business, it's the way in a leader. You see leaders who reach a peak and then they think they're all impressed with themselves, and guess what happens? Their organization suffers.
Right.
And so to me, leadership is about understanding you're a human being first, and at the end of the day, we're all equal as humans, right? Nobody's going to remember that I was the CEO of a big company when I'm no longer the CEO. What they're going to remember me as is being a person who might have helped them in their life, right? And so to me, that's really leadership, especially in distribution, since we're such a people-centric business.
And in leading that way, you're definitely leaving a lasting legacy.
You hope so. And even if it's one person, think about that. If you can help one person have a better life, right? That compounds itself, because there's a good chance that person's going to help another person have a good life, right? And then you can rest easy that you made an impact in the world, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Graybar. What's happening at Graybar that just gets you excited every morning?
First of all, I just think we're a great company.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying, right?
Well, we're going through a huge transformation called Graybar Connect. You always have to have some kind of a phrase to anchor around. It really is a business transformation that's anchored around technology engagement, but it touches every aspect of the business. To me, the view is we need to evolve ourselves or challenge ourselves or really tear ourselves apart in some cases before somebody else does it to us, right? I'm not willing to let things happen to us. I want us to try to, control our destiny a little bit more. Seeing the rise of AI was really a trigger that we needed to look at how we can become efficient and productive while still keeping those non-negotiables. And so we're in the middle of a multi-year transformation. First was anchored with an ERP system, which was outstanding. It was the largest of the scale for the last decade, probably, of its size. The consultant who worked with us said it was the best conversion they've ever had, which is saying something.
Yeah.
We were on time, on budget, and had no drop-off in business. We had record revenue during this time period, which is a testament to our people. 100%. It was our employees and the leadership that was engaged at all levels. But it was just the beginning. Now we're in the middle of really redesigning all the business processes using AI. It's going to change what people do in every single role in our company. Mm-hmm. Part of this is developing an agility, and I think that's the biggest thing, as I tell our team, is what this has to force us to do is to understand that the way we operated in the past, especially around technology or big change, is no longer going to work in the future. When you do an ERP system, that's a multi-year project. With AI, it's 12 weeks or less.
Yeah.
When we
you got to change the whole mentality
like
and your
this,
processes. Yeah,
processes. We did it, the one process I mentioned, which saved all these 8 hours a week, it was a 12-week cycle from design to execution, and then the whole company rolled out once we worked out a couple of the bugs. You would never do that before, right? In a big, huge transformation. We need to develop that level of agility, and so do distributors going forward, because the rate of change is so significant. Distributors typically have been, you put a process into place, it's there for years and decades and stuff, it's consistent, it's efficient, but in the world today, we can't do that, right? We have to be able to offer some consistency, which is the relationship side, but we have to be able to be responsive to the changes that are out there around technology. And so for us, part of this Graybar Connect is developing that muscle in the organization to understand that this system we just put in, this AI process, guess what? It might only be there for 12 months, right? There may be something that is really cool and much better or more efficient or whatever the case may be. We may have to dump it. We may have to put a new system and dump it in like a 12-week period. It's going to be quite challenging, but I think we're going to get there. And we're going to get there because our people believe in it, and our people want to be part of this change.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that. And so when you're introducing an initiative like Graybar Connect, sounds like you're disrupting before you get disrupted.
That's the plan.
How do you bring people along on that journey to say, hey, we used to do it this way, now we're going to change it so dramatically? How do you get them engaged and excited? And it's one thing for you to talk about it as the leader, but they're the ones who are charged with implementing it.
Yeah, they have to make it work.
Yeah.
Right. It looks good on paper, but will it impact the customer or not? Will it help us? We try to do it with a multi-tier approach, and change management is the most important thing any company needs to deal with, especially around any kind of transformational change, technology or business process, right? Or new business you may be getting into. You've got to get the people with you. So what we did is we had the core group that actually worked on the design, and we brought in the field experts. So we try to bring in people from functional areas that are actually doing that work today.
That's smart. So you're not telling them, hey, here's the new way we're doing everything. You come help us design it.
This is all the cool stuff this thing can do. Now help us. What are your pain points? What are the things that if we freed you up, you could spend more time with the customer? What are the things that are the biggest friction? What's the biggest friction in your day-to-day life? What are the things stressing you out? And so we try to engage them in the design. And then what we do is, as we're going through the process design, we test it with them. Even when we're doing the little sandbox test, you give it to these people and say, break it. Okay, play with it. What else are you missing? We also engage leadership at all levels. With these processes and these systems in Graybar Connect, my senior leadership team, before we did the system upgrade, met every week or 3 to 4 times a week, every single senior officer. I received written updates 3 times a week. And then I had a weekly meeting just to update, because it was important that the senior leadership owns the change. Right? You don't just push it off on somebody else.
Hopefully it's going to work.
But if it isn't, those people in the room are the ones that can fix it.
Right.
Or they should be the ones that can fix it. And so it's important that leadership at all levels are engaged. You have to over-communicate, and sometimes we didn't do that well. I think sometimes we dropped the ball on communications. We assumed people understood and they didn't. You can never communicate enough during a change, period. And you have to have the voices heard of the people who are using it. So it has to be a two-way street here. One of the most important things you need to do in a leader is listen. And that means listening to things that may be uncomfortable.
Sure.
Right? Really hearing what they're trying to tell you, not what you want to hear. And that's hard. People are not going to tell me something bad unless I create an environment where they won't get hurt by that. Right? That they trust that I won't fire them if they tell me something that's not working. And what I always tell them is, you need to tell me because I don't know. And if I don't know, I can't fix it. Right? So it's an evolution for us too. Is it perfect? Nope. I don't think we'll ever be perfect there. I think we're going to have to communicate. I think there'll be misses. But if you don't try hard enough, if you don't take enough chances, if you don't push the envelope enough, you won't grow enough. My dad raised me with the concept of your objective is to set unrealistic goals in a realistic time frame. So that's what your job is as a leader. And so you need people to believe that they can shoot for here, right? Because if you settle for this and say, okay, we're only going to go here, guess what? You're only going to move the organization this far, right? But if you go for the stars, you're going to move your organization much farther. But even more importantly, you're going to create a belief by your people that nothing is unrealistic, that there isn't anything they can't accomplish. Right? And so, as you go through these big changes, I think that's part of it. We redid.
And by the way, I can testify to that when you first joined the board in our very first conversation, and we were talking about what did we want to accomplish in the next year. You pushed me. You said, that sounds great, but are we reaching for the stars? And so I've thought about that conversation every year since as we're designing what do we want to do.
And you're setting really good goals, and guess what? You're hitting.
We're hitting a lot of them, right? And if not, we're getting really close.
Exactly.
And then we can leapfrog the next time.
Exactly.
And when we miss, as a good leaders, you were asking us to learn the lessons, but to show the progress that we're making. And
that's right.
NAW, we've tripled in size in the last couple of years because of that sort of mentality.
Because otherwise, you might have been happy with just 10% growth, right? Because 10% sounds great. Nope, you can do more,
right? And
we will do more because you believe it can be done, right? When people believe stuff, there's nothing that you can't overcome. When you go into an environment and have already made excuses why something can't get done, guess what? It doesn't. And it's the same thing in any kind of big leadership thing. We redid our logistics again. And I remember sitting there and I said to our team, okay, we do data centers. We have these big projects. I want you to be able to go into a location ahead of it and create a temporary, huge warehouse system and stuff to handle these projects and then get out in a couple of years. Figure it out, go. And they said, are you kidding me? I go, no. I said, you have 1 week to give me the plan. All of a sudden, they're like panicked. They're freaking out. They're trying to figure this out. And guess what? We opened a bunch of them already. We're writing tons of business because we're ahead of the start. We've got 10 more lined up. And it's created an environment now where my team is like, what about this now? We can create for these kind of projects. Why don't we look at this new creative solution? And I said to them, part of me pushing you is to start pushing way beyond your comfort zone. And instead of looking within the parameters of that your comfort, right, where you're sitting there saying, I know the game, I know distribution, let's look at other industries. Let's look at best practices in tech. Let's look at best practices in transportation, in retail, whatever the case may be. Because it doesn't mean that just distributors have good ideas. Why don't we learn from other industries and bring those best practices to make us even stronger? And so we're going through a lot of that right now. And we're working on a project to really try to upskill our employees for the future. We're trying to figure out what are those new skills we need, and we're starting an educational program around that.
When you figure that out, let me know. I got three kids. I'm not sure what path they should follow.
I'm not sure either, but we're trying to find that.
Well, Kathy, let's end with this. As we talked about, you're the chair of the NAW Board of Directors. You are leading the wholesale distribution industry. What do you hope to accomplish this year as chair?
First and foremost, I would love to do more advocacy work here in Washington to really get the message out as to who we are and what we can do to help move the U.S. economy and even globally in some cases. There's a lot of distributors that are global. How we can help make people's lives better by improving the economy, and that policymakers need to take us seriously because we are the supply chain. So I think that would be important, as well as providing education as to what a significant industry we are to get talent into our industry. We talk about this a lot, that people don't know wholesale distribution because we're not a retail. We're not a common name. There's a lot of people that can have really good lives and really good careers in our industry. And so, again, education, advocacy. The second is around this AI world and really helping distributors understand how we can transform ourselves and how we can have a really human-augmented AI environment to lead forward and to show best practices and to continue to evolve to be the leaders we are in the supply chain. I think the skills that are required, the how do we take our workforces and create an environment for the future where people want to come work for us around AI. And so to me, that whole we're all struggling with it. Is AI going to replace us? What does that mean? How are we going to work? And so how do we embrace it, use it to our advantage, and help our employees? And then the third is to continue to focus on connecting distributors across different sectors to promote best practices.
Yeah.
Improve the communications line, get more people in distribution engaged in this industry, smaller businesses, medium-sized, large businesses, because at the end of the day, we have the same challenges, right? Some cases it's just scale, but we can help each other. We have the answers in our industry. We just need to find out who has that, right? And if we can share that, this industry is not going to just be an $8 trillion industry. We could be easily half the U.S. GDP, easily in the next several years.
And that's what NAW hopes to do, is we want to be that community where people can come together, share those ideas, those
That's
insights,
why I think people
data.
should join.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think people should join. I've been engaged with NAW for over 30 years myself. And I tell people all the time, it's the best association I've ever worked with. And it continues to be under your leadership and your team.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, so Kathy, you're an incredible CEO. You're an incredible chair of the board. Turns out you're an incredible podcast guest. So Kathy, for all you do for Graybar, your employees in the industry, I want to thank you so much and appreciate you joining us here on Distributors Deliver Podcast.
Thank you for the opportunity, and you take care and much success.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again real soon.